I just pulled up from your book, some of the examples of authors arguing for psychic power you quote. You have Joanna Michelson here. She says the condemnation was not issued against mere frauds and windbags. She's talking about Scripture's condemnation of psychics. She says the condemnation was not issued against mere frauds and windbags. Incidentally, the Bible has always recognized the reality of phenomena produced by occultism. Then you quote Neil T. Anderson saying the mediums and spiritists that God warned against in Leviticus and Deuteronomy were not con artists, but people who possessed and passed on knowledge which didn't come through natural channels of perception. These people have opened themselves up to the spirit world and become channels of knowledge from Satan. So I wanted to ask you about that. I've have conversations with people all the time where they will tell me, they think that prophets, people, maybe even now they believe they were false prophets, but that these false prophets actually gave them information that they could not have otherwise known. I've spoken with people who said, I used to be a part of the New Apostolic Reformation movement, and I would prophesy to people, and I would prophesy things about people that I know I wasn't hot reading because I was, they were the ones doing it. The person talking to me, they said I wasn't hot reading. I literally would have information put in my head about people that I could not have known, and it was very accurate information. So do you think that Satan or demons can implant thoughts in the heads of people, whether they're psychics, whether they claim to be prophets?
See, I'm a person who would say, oh, if someone told me that, I would say, what did you know about them? What did you tell them that you said you couldn't possibly know? What did you? And it may not have been hot reading, but it could have been what we call cold reading. And cold reading is where you just say something. I've told people the name of their dog. I just took a guess and I got it right. And they're like, and then as you talk to people, their body language or other things, or so these people who don't think, who say, well, I did it. I know somehow I did it. There's that whole thing of like, maybe it's intuition, or there's just things that are true about people. Most, like I have a list of things like, 95% of women experience this. 75% of men are experiencing this. And those are things that can be used. I remember years ago, there was Bill Gothard's Basic Youth Institute, something like that, Basic Youth Institute or whatever it was that he was promoting. And in there was a list of things about people. And I got that list and I said, this is perfect for cold reading for me to use as I'm talking to people. Because there's certain things that are just true. And so they may believe that they were, that this was coming to them somehow, but I would want to know specifics because stories get so thrown out of shape, bent out of shape. Like I used to produce doves in my magic act. I used to produce a dove. The most I ever produced was 2 doves. But people would say, come to me later, like I had one lady say to me a few years ago and I did this they did this in the 70s. And she came to me about 6 years ago. She says, all those doves that you used to make appear, I just don't understand how you could do that with all those doves. Well, probably in the show she saw, I did 1 dove. And I deal with that again in the book, how we get these things bent out of shape. We forget, we add to it. But so with these people, I don't think what can Satan do and what can he do? I know that I don't have to be like where Benny Hinn said Satan appeared in my bedroom one night, okay, and he tempted me or this, that, and the other thing. All I have to do is get on the internet and I'm tempted. All I have to do is turn my TV on and I can be tempted. I don't need Satan to be tempted. I think, Satan works through the world in the flesh. And so I think most of our problems are our flesh. The spiritual warfare, the spirit against the flesh. That's where I think they are. I don't necessarily think that Satan is putting thoughts in my mind. I'm really not I don't really buy into that he puts thoughts in my mind. I know that, there's doctrines of demons out there. I know that. And it could be false teaching. That's doctrine of demons. So I just think that, people who think they really did that, there's another explanation to it. See, here's one of the things I say too. I can't argue your experience, but I can argue your interpretation of your experience. I think that makes a lot of sense. I can't argue your experience because I wasn't there, but I can argue your interpretation of your experience. So I know I went back and forth with somebody who told me he saw somebody hold a spoon in their hand and that spoon went right over. Now, this was 30 years ago. They told me that spoon went right over. And I said, are you sure that? And so the questions would be, whose spoon was that? See, I'm not going to buy into that unless I give them my spoon. That's one thing I want to do. I'll give them my spoon. I'm going to check their hands. I'm going to put them in a controlled situation. And that's what Andre did. He offered $25,000 to anyone who could perform in a controlled setting, who'd be able to perform a supernatural effect, whether that, especially like with Jesus, turning water to wine or levitating. But we were talking too about, spoons that would bend, or astral projection, where people claim that they could go out of their body, their spirit would go out of their body, and they could go to another dimension, another planet. And so Andre had a very simple thing to do, and he did it in Russia because the guy claimed he could astral project. He put a box, top, sides, back, only could see forward, put a box over this guy's head, had a blackboard behind him, and on that blackboard, on the other opposite side, Andre wrote a sentence. And he told the fellow, now go out in your astral body, go behind the blackboard, read it, come back, and tell us what I wrote. And so they did it with the fellow in Russia. The fellow came back in his body, supposedly. Andre said, what did you write? He said, God is love. Well, that was a great guess, but Andre wrote, Billy is a boy. You'll come up to other people who claim they can do astral projection, and they'll say, well, when I'm in my astral body, I can't read. So I'm not able to do that. And then you'll get the people who you say, we'll give you $25,000 if you do that. And they'll say, if I did that and I accepted the $25,000, God would take this ability away from me. And so my response was, well, you know what? There's a lot of charities out there that God would love. Why don't you do it? And we'll give your charity $25,000. So there's always excuse upon excuse. And so some people say, Terry, you're so cynical and everything like this. You'll never believe. Well, I've done the research. I've interviewed people. I've looked at medical reports, all these kind of things. And it's been weighed and found wanting in my experience. But yes, God can heal. Satan's our adversary. He's our foe. There are demons. There are angels. I don't know completely how they act, but I don't want to go beyond the biblical teaching. The biblical teaching of demonization, that we know that the woman or the man was, he had strength. He seemed to be out of his mind or whatever. It doesn't say he could levitate. It doesn't say he could read minds. The demon-possessed girl in the book of Acts, it says she made her masters much gain by fortune telling. Well, you know what? Right now, you can go on TV and the radio, and now there's a new thing out again, California psychics. You can pay $20 for like 10 minutes, and the best psychics, they're tested. The best psychics will tell you your future and about your future and give you a reading. They make a lot of money. It doesn't mean that they had any ability, and that's what I say about the demon-possessed girl in the book of Acts. Yes, she was demonized. She was demon-possessed. The Bible says that. But the Bible doesn't say she could read minds. See? So this is people interpreting it incorrectly or reading more into the passage than I believe is really there.